Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It is time to have a look at another vehicle that I spaded over the winter period because of the event. This one is the F-111A, and I can't think of a vehicle that I've been as disappointed in recently as I have the F-111. It came in with a lot of bravado and a lot of I suppose, optimism from people that the Vark was finally in the game. But for me, it just feels awful to play, and it's mainly because of a few separate factors, especially some changes that they made to it. So first of all, let's have a look at the positives of the machine. The positives is that it has access to a very, very good RWR. Its RWR is fantastic for the BR that it's at. It tells you when missiles are launched at you. It tells you what is, locking you from the general areas, and at the same time, it has a more attached to it, which is kind of crazy. So the vehicle itself has a lot of protection in that setup. By the way, I would turn off the more straight away, because even though the more will keep you alive from stuff like, IR-guided missiles and other stuff, the major issue is it uses way too many countermeasures just to deal with one threat. So by the time that you deal with two threats, which a lot of vehicles have 4 to 6 missiles at these BRs, what will end up happening is you run out of countermeasures, which of course isn't exactly great. So basically, it's useful, but at the same time, it's much better if you individually actually monitor your countermeasures, so therefore you don't have, too many issues with it. The amounts of fuel that you can bring, I bring in an hour with this thing because it has some very, very thirsty engines, but overall the amount of fuel is completely fine. Generally, it works incredibly well. It also has access to, of course, the Vulcan if you want to bring it, so you will always have a weapon with a lot of ammunition. The Vulcan has 2,000 rounds on this machine, which is just kind of nuts. And also it has a metric ton of secondary options, which is really nice. Whether you want to bring bombs, whether you want to bring rockets, bullpups, all of these things are around, or just a metric ton of AIM-9Bs, if you feel like it. But AIM-9Bs, obviously, at 10.3, not exactly great as a missile. So, yeah, that exists. Also, if you want to be able to fully set back your wings now, you have to take a very small amount of ordnance. Basically, what I've been doing is taking the 2 inner hard points, whatever is on those, and you can push your wings back to a decent amount, and then kind of go from there. So, the ordnance options are great. The RWR is very fun. The more is nice, but once again, the amount of countermeasures it uses, not too great. The straight line speed of this thing is okay. It's not the best, it's not the worst. Let's go into the problems. Number one problem, teammates. And I don't mean they're bad. I mean that they're either bots or they're grinding vehicles which are in the tech tree. One of the things that I found with the F-111, its major role in aerialistic is pretty simple. You go after ground targets, whether it be bases, whether it be stuff like artilleries, AAs, things like that, with either rockets or bombs. Rockets are probably easier to do since it has the CCIP for the rockets. It also has CCIP and CCRP for the bombs, makes it a bit easier. But basically, you are at the start of the battle something to take out stuff like bases. With even just the inner pylons of rockets, or the inner 2 pylons, of rockets, you get 228 of them. It takes about 100 rockets to destroy a base, so you can destroy 2¼ bases. But you'll never get there because of your teammates. What people have figured out, and this happens during every event and also happens during pretty much every, time when people just want to grind and not really think about life, is they hit ground targets, which is why when people go, well, we just need more ground targets on the ground for stuff like strike aircraft and strike bombers. Doesn't matter, because stuff like the F4 exists, which are multi-role and can do everything, so therefore people will favor those, because no matter what the area they go into, they will be able to use those. So in the F-111, I had a lot of F4Ss, a lot of F4Js, a lot of F4EJs, and also F4Es that were on my team, which guess what? They have at least a better acceleration than the F111, so what would end up happening is they would get to the bases first, and since they can carry a lot of ordnance, they would destroy all the bases, and you're basically sat there going, well, what do I do now? So you either go to the center of the battlefield and take out, you know, the AI ground targets, which can work well, but it's also where the battle is going on at the time. So you generally just get hammered, which doesn't really feel very well. Which is why in this video you're probably seeing some repeat highlights, because to be honest, there wasn't a lot of highlights in this thing. The better way of describing it was you take off, you are not fast enough to be able to get to the bases, so you get no points from that. Then, if you decide to go in a dogfighting role, or something similar, you realize that you get outpaced by everything, and also they made a change halfway through I was spading this thing. So the cool thing about the F111 when I started spading it, right, when you were in that situation where after you'd hit the bases, if you were able to, or if you hit some of the AIs, or whatever you were doing, you would get jumped on by fighters, which isn't too surprising. Now, with the amount of countermeasures it had, and also being able to, you know, turn off the afterburner, and turning, and then burning away, you would actually be able to get away from stuff. It was really good, you know, it was actually quite good at defensively flying against the vast majority of vehicles you faced because of its speed. Now, there is a problem, because halfway through spading it, they completely changed its flight model, basically massively increasing the amount of speed that you lose in a turn. So, if now you get jumped on by fighters, which will happen because you are very large and also a very easy target to hit but with missiles, what ends up happening is you lose ridiculous amounts of speed. Even with a small turn, you lose 200 to 300 kilometers an hour, meaning that once you turn on the afterburners to run away again, it doesn't matter because you've lost so much you cannot gain it back in acceleration from the afterburner, and you get caught by the vehicle. So now they have completely nuked the defensive capabilities of the F111, and you are just a sitting duck whenever anybody jumps on you, apart from maybe a vehicle that is lower BR than you, which you never see, because 11.3 being such a strong BR, and also 10.7 for America being such a strong BR as well. So they just nuked it completely. It's a awful vehicle to play right now, because of the fact that your main role is taken by multi-role vehicles, and then on top of that, once you get to the fight, with the FM changes they did, you cannot just dogfight or do anything with the vehicle. This has become basically similar to how you play stuff like A10s. And the way that you play A10s, because you're not fast enough in an A10, you turn up to the battlefield late on. If your team has won the battle, then you get to, you know, have fun with a bunch of ground targets. If your team is still battling, you obviously fire the AIM-9Ls to help out and then hit ground targets. If your team has lost, you get smashed in the face. You have no effect on the battlefield, basically. All you have an effect on is being able to decrease the battle timer by taking out ground targets after stuff has happened. That's what happens with the F111A the vast majority of the time, and all I can say is I'm disappointed. Because when I started playing this thing, I could see the opportunities with it. I still see those opportunities, but with the changes that they made during our spading it, they nuked the vehicle. It's just done. It's finished. And maybe with some BR decompression, that can help this thing out, but you can't lower it in BR, because if you lower it in BR, then nothing will be able to kill it. The only thing that will help this out is decompressing BRs, or maybe just taking away a bunch of ordnance from fighter aircraft. Maybe that's the way to do it. So stuff like J-35 XSs can't rocket bases, stuff like Phantoms aren't able to just nuke all the ground targets and then go after other machines afterwards, like a missile truck. The F-111 and many other strike aircraft, whichever will get added in the future, have no role or have no place in this game. And it just sucks, because they're such iconic aircraft, they have a really nice setup, but as usual, when you're talking about efficiency, people will go for the easiest route, and that means that vehicles like the F-111, get left behind. It's happened so many times in War Thunder. It's happened at the lower tiers, and it will happen at the high tiers as well with these types of vehicles. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd like to thank Schnitzel Stroker, Brendan Quinn, Vilneus, Character Fuel, Carrion Crow, Nicholas Richardson, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, B. Young, Opium Prime, Masonocrat, Lafouche, Alan Hacker, Sem Arslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.